This is an example of how to create a procedure in MySQL Workbench. Now, the first thing to creating a procedure is that you've got to decide which database you're going to be using. In this case, I want to use the classic models database. And so before you even create a procedure, you want to have a use database command. In this case, it was use classic models. Now, you will see written over here two queries. One's the query that we're going to create a procedure out of, and that's this big query up here. And the second query that you see is the subquery that I wrote previously that I can embed in the query I really want to have as a procedure. Now, the query I really want to have as a procedure, it looks kind of complicated, and it may well be. So this query uses the classic models database and returns the customer name as customer and a count of the number of orders that they have placed and the sales rep that's currently servicing that customer. Now it's going to return only those customers whose count of orders is greater than the average number of orders placed by all customers. Now the query to get the average number of orders placed by all customers is the subquery. And that's where I use the having statement right here. That goes inside the having statement right here. Now you will notice that the subquery is pretty much down here and it looks a little bit complicated. And the reason is that the subquery also has a query inside it. The way this works is I basically counted the number of orders for all customers and I saved that as, or I gave it a name called counts, and off that column counts I just got the average. And so it looks a little bit complicated, but once I broke it down it was relatively straightforward. And so what I did was I took the subquery and embedded it into the larger query that I was interested in getting that average number. Okay, now to create a procedure from this. So to create a procedure, you need to throw in a create procedure command, and then you need to give the procedure a name, or the procedure or the query that you want to run again and again and again a name. And so I'm just going to call this query 1, open close brackets, and that's it. You don't need to throw a semicolon after that, because then this SQL query that we want to run gets associated with the procedure called query 1. And so as you can see, the query is really long and tedious to write, and so if you have such queries you might actually want to save them as query 1, query 2, things of that nature. In this case you might actually want to give a more descriptive name, but in this case I'm just giving a very straightforward one. So when you do Control Enter, it tells me query 1 already exists because I actually tried to verify this. You'll see the result of here, query 1 already exists. I can change its name and call it query 2, and if I run it you will see a check mark over here. Query 2 has been created, and if you take a look at the stored procedures you'll see query 1 and selection, and then I'm going to refresh all, and then I see query 2. Now if I ever want to call this query again, all I need to do is I need to call, and I can just select query 2, and so when I call query 2 I see the results of that query. I hope this helps you get a sense of how to use the procedure. You can use this for your group project, and hopefully it'll be useful for you. If you have any questions about the query itself, do drop me a note and I can try to explain it in a little bit more detail. But this was just an illustration of the create procedure syntax.